Hello, this is Steven Seifert. Welcome. I call this QDF 14, and it is Saturday, October 5th, 11:45 Central Time. This is session 4. Advanced students. The class is called Dulcimer Solos. Here's my approach to performing a tune. So that's kind of what we're doing. My approach. Yours might need to be different. This is my approach to performing a tune. I start with a simple, recognizable statement. For me, if you asked me to play, let's just say I was in concert and you said, "Can you play Mary Had a Little Lamb?" Well, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have to do something neat with this. I haven't rehearsed it, but I know that first time I play through it, I want everyone to recognize it. And I'm going to play it rather plainly. It'll be very traditional sounding with the drone, and I'm on the melody string because that sets the stage. That's the foundation. And not only does that present it to the audience, but that gives me a chance to analyze it, right? If I'm doing drone style, no chords, I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, there's a A chord here. Okay, here's the G chord. Oh, I could do something neat here later. Playing it really simple the first time, almost a beginner version. I've got a good instrument. I'm in tune. I've got good timing. So it's going to be at worst, it'll be pleasant, I hope, right? So I take that opportunity to think about where could I go with this? And I know if every time I play through the tune again, I just take a very conservative jump up. Just do something a little different. I can easily get 3 or 5 times out of it. And then if I put my heart in it, play it like I mean it, well, then we have a starting place. So now, and this is often how I learn tunes, not the hard ones, the easier ones. If I did Mary Had a Little Lamb in concert that one time because you requested it, maybe it wasn't great. But it gives me a starting point, and I can now move into the future and actually turn it into something or never do it again, right? So after that initial statement, I vary it by changing octaves and adding subtle enhancements. I think a big part of our 2 hours today will be that stuff. Now, this is an advanced class, so some of you have already moved things around octaves. You've had my flat picking class. So I still can address these things, but I don't feel like I have to teach them from scratch. But if we're not covering something as deep as you want, ask, and I can probably go there pretty quick. It says, I introduce something surprising before returning to the original idea with a cool ending. So I start off with that beginner version. I do subtle developments. 3rd, 4th, 5th time through, I start thinking, I need to start wrapping this up. So I introduce something surprising before returning to the original idea. So often, right before the end, I would come back to Mary Had a Little Lamb somewhat like the first time through. But then I hit it with a cool ending. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way I play tunes, but I live this formula quite a bit. In this 2-hour class, I'll break down my process note for note for both a slow and a fast piece, providing tablature and tips on how to create your own variations. So this is going to be a workshop. Like imagine you are in a wood shop and we are going to be cutting and sanding and we'll figure something out there. Now your handouts, let me bring those up for myself. I gave you a lot, arguably too many. And I think it was necessary. So, Dulcimer solos. And what do you need this for? The biggest reason you might need something like this is to win a contest or to place or at least feel good about your time there. You want to take a tune that everyone knows, or maybe people don't know, maybe you've written the tune and you don't just want to play it through over and over the same way. That's where the judges go, man, you just played that through 3 times the same way. You could have saved us all a lot of time by playing it through once. Now, I'm not saying they're that jaded, but I asked a little girl once at a contest. I was nervous. I was approaching the stage to do my, I was going to go out there and compete. And I saw a little girl. In my memory, she was this tall. She had a fiddle that matched her body size. I'm sure she was a little bigger, but I mean, she looked 6 or something. And somebody said that she'd already entered a lot of contests or something. The details are getting fuzzy, but it was Athens, Alabama. And I walked up to her and I said, with my dulcimer in hand, "How many times should I play the tune?" And she looked at me and said, "1 time through, unless you got something more to say." Like somebody had said that to her, right? And so that's where I went out and played Soldier's Joy 1 time through and got first place at the dulcimer competition. Now, Lee Rowe, if you know him, went out there and played a beautiful Amazing Grace and then another tune. I mean, I liked what he did better than what I did, but I went out there and just Noter style, Soldier's Joy, 1 time, got off. Judges appreciate that. You got to know what they're looking for. But another thing is if you're playing in a concert, at a coffee house, an open mic. But really, this process I do where I take a beginner version and then toy with it, I love doing that all by myself. And I often think of it as a playground. You know, when you're a kid and they unleash you on the playground, you like to run and see what all the different things are. That was before attorneys and litigation.
Before attorneys.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, there used to be all
Well,
these
hang
different
on,
things you could do on the
sorry.
playground, and now I think they just put them in a box for an hour. If I don't know, I'm kidding. But I also think of board games like Life, Monopoly. There's different games, Hungry Hippos, Parcheesi. I think of each tune as a game board or a playground. I also like to think of each tune as a blank canvas. So if you think of Bob Ross painting, he would start off with a blank canvas. And then he would just start with maybe a water line, a couple mountains. And I still call that the blank canvas. He's setting up his blank canvas. And then he would generate fresh things for the moment. And I call it a rendering. So if you get me to play a tune for you right now, it's not like it's all coming from scratch, but a good bit of it is rendered fresh in the moment. Not everyone likes that. It's living on the edge, and it does require a lot of practice. But I think the good news is you can model what you do after what I do, but just don't get crazy complex. Keep it reasonable. All right, that's a lot of talking, isn't it? So on this sucker, let's see what we've got. I want to look through these pages first, and I know it's a lot. Um, let's see. Now I'm going to look through these quickly. Now you don't have, you can just thumb through them because I'm going to be very quick. We've got a whiskey before breakfast that's out of Join the Jam, and I put that in there because lots of people have it. Then we have a whiskey before breakfast that's all quarter notes because I always take things that are busy and turn them into this in my mind. I call it the skeleton of the tune. I don't want to learn the busy whiskey first. I should have numbered these pages, but I am going in order here. I don't start with the busy one. I like to start with the bare bones skeleton, usually quarter notes or half notes. I sometimes get this from paper. I'll show you how I do that. But I also often get it by ear. If I go learn a tune by ear, I can't pick up all the notes. I just get these real big ones. A lot of people call them the big notes. That's my skeleton. That's my foundation. And then I'm going to show you how to adorn that. Next page is sideways. If you're on a tablet, worst case scenario, take a screenshot of it, and then you can go into your photos, and you can also lock your tablet's orientation to keep it from spinning around on you. This, and you won't need this a whole lot, but this is less than quarter notes. This has got a bunch of half notes in it. It's just an alternate way of thinking of a tune's skeleton. I've got a whiskey before breakfast, flat picked fancy. This is taking it somewhere new and surprising. That would be that surprise I was talking about, where you go, it sounds like whiskey, but it's a little different, fancier. Then I've got one that's on 2 pages. It says whiskey with 1.5 fret. Now, I don't have a 1.5 fret here, but I do like them. And I also like chromatic dulcimers, but this is for those of you with a 1.5 who want to get a little bit of a bluegrassy sound. So this would be an alternate surprise. You don't have to play through the whole version here. You could actually borrow measures 1 and 2 and only use them one time during your performance. Think of it as all these pages. It's like a source book for ideas on the kinds of things you might do. And then whiskey before breakfast, first time through. So if you've seen me on YouTube, I've got a version of whiskey before breakfast. It's almost to 2 million views. I'm so excited. I guess that's a life. I don't know if you get a sucker for that. But I attempted to write it out. And it says first time through. I think I ended up adding a lot more to it. You'll see it's like 5, 6, how many? It's 9 pages. I think this is me attempting to write out exactly what's on that video. Yeah, it's the whole thing. So forget the first time through. It's the whole video. Not all of it is easy to understand. Some of it might not be accurate, but it's pretty darn close. It's not a mess. It's pretty close. And what I think you'll find is when we don't teach you guys what we do. We kind of give you friendlier versions. One time I wrote out exactly what Aaron O'Rourke was doing, and he said, "That's not how I do it." And I said, "It really is how you do it," and we figured it out. What we do is not necessarily what we think, and as students, if we always gave you exactly what we do, I think you'd find it unpleasant. But it's good to study it from time to time. All right, so that's tune number 1. Same kind of thing for Amazing Grace. I don't know if we'll spend as much time on Amazing Grace, but join the jam version, and then I gave you some lyrics with chord symbols. Especially on slow things, it's nice to think of the lyrics as you're performing. It can Amazing Grace, kind of a bare bones version, up high on the melody string with half notes, and here's a quarter note version. And then the one that says page 6 on the bottom left-hand corner, that's a finger-picked version. So we may not chew through all of everything I just said. We may just look at 2 measures on one of those and then jump to the next one and look at 2 measures on that. But I wanted to just give you a bunch because this represents a bunch of things that are in my head and things I'm used to. And then I went ahead and put some chord sheets. So the first couple you've probably gotten from me before. And then I've got those same 2 sheets again with red lines and simply showing the flipped shapes. We'll end up looking at that a little. And then I've got the same sheets again, but this time I put red 7s all over it. And I'll talk about that if we get to it. So sometimes people go, well, why would you give us all this paper and not, use it all? Well, because I don't know you, and I don't know what you need. And so, it's better to give you a little more. Everyone loves gifts. But if we don't cover it, you're welcome to ask about it. Now, I normally wouldn't just go through the handouts at the top of the class like that, but that's what we're looking at. But a good bit of what we're going to do is not on the paper, what we're going to start with. So before I dig in and hit you hard with this stuff, do you have any questions pre-questions. No one looks questioning, so that's good.
I have a
All
question.
right. Go ahead.
How'd you lose all that weight?
I didn't
What's
lose
your
weight.
secret?
I've been cleaning my teeth more. Gosh. So I upped it. I go to the dentist 4 times a year now, 4 cleanings a year. I floss 3, 4 times a day. They're still yellow. It's just they told me I have weird teeth. Anyway, all right. Thank you
Ah,
though. That I appreciate the attempt. Maybe I have lost. My head keeps getting bigger. I know that. All
oh no,
right.
you look great.
Well, thank you. All right. So, um, there's a foundation to build on for what I want to show you. It's easier to show you these tricks if you adopt my strumming and picking style after you get the ideas, then pick it however you like. But it's just a lot easier to teach if we use this. I'm going back and forth to the beat of the music, whether I'm hitting the strings or not. I'm moving back and forth to the beat. I'm not always hitting the strings. Look at it fast. So I maintain this alternating, whether I'm hitting the strings or not. It's not the only way I strum. I tell people it's the best first way to strum. So please try out all the exceptions to this. But just right now, for the next 10 minutes, try to do it just like I'm doing it. So the thing that I teach people is I go back and forth to the beat and the groove of the music, whether I'm hitting the strings or not. When I'm not hitting the strings, I keep trying to maintain a similar movement. I don't speed up movement. I don't slow it down. I don't pause the hand. Although, if you watch me in the concert tonight, I will do all that other stuff. But right now, we're limiting it. So this is what I teach beginners. You move back and forth evenly and just hit the outs only. Do that with me. When we get to the hard stuff, I'll be wishing you had this. Now, improvising, every once in a while, I let the pick hit an out in or a group of out ins, but I don't change the alternation. So predominantly, I'm hitting outs only. Every once in a while, I'll allow the pick to do an out in, then I get right back to out only. Sometimes I do 2 or 3 out ins in a row. If we were playing together, I wouldn't want us doing the out ins exactly the same. You know, I would want you to constantly render fresh. Make sure we're moving at the same rate. Don't go twice as fast as me, and don't go half the rate either. Sometimes when you're doing outs only, I'm doing out ins. Sometimes we're together. And if there were 3 of us, that's even better, I feel like. I don't want to hear a whole room play exactly the same rhythm unless they're just showing off for a second. Like maybe for 10 seconds, the surprise would be the group all plays exactly the same thing. But that's good for like half of an A part. And then maybe do it again, but don't do it the rest of the night. Like it's just a neat thing. But when I hear a person playing, I'm hoping they're sprinkling those extra strums in different places every time they play. So I learn the skeleton of the tune. I don't need anyone to tell me when to put in those extra strums. Give me the skeleton, I'll add the extra strums. Fresh every time I play through the tune. So let's just real quick look at Whiskey Before Breakfast, the nice boring version. So this is the second handout I gave you. It just says whiskey before breakfast, and there are all quarter notes, no eighth notes. I need to be able to share the screen a little too. All quarter notes. It was the second page in the packet. All right. Now, some of you have done this with me in other classes, but I'm going to play this, and I'm going to go out for every number you see, and then you'll see me occasionally allowing the pick to hit the out and the in, but I'm not going to speed up, slow down, or pause. You don't need to look at your fingers, by the way. You know where 4 is, and even if you're wrong, it's okay. If you're accidentally on 3 or 5, it's fine. Keep your eyes on that paper. All right, here we go. Let's do the first line. 3, and ready, go. That's the first measure. Second measure. Now, instead of doing all quarter notes, every once in a while, I'm going to make one of these an out in, which is an eighth note pair. Second line. Next measure, do all out ins. 4, 2, 0. And then do whatever you like. But we're moving together. So we're recording this, so I want you to remember to work on this. Take this quarter note version or get some others from me and just practice making some of them quarter notes. That's where you only hit the out, and make some of them eighth note pairs, and develop a thoughtless ability to make that strum render fresh. It's a living thing. And so if you play through this tune 3 times, people might not know why, but they're going to get the feeling you're not just doing the same thing over and over. Now let me show you this on the right hand. Watch this. Some people do this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And I even do that when I'm in a concert sometimes. But right now, I want you to match the movement with the and, like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Instead of this. 1 and 2. So don't whip your hand back. Move whether you're hitting the and or not. It'll set us up for some good things. Let's play again from the beginning. The default should be the quarter note version. And as you are able, bring in some of those out ins. 1 and 2 and 3 and ready, go. Second measure. Second line. Every once in a while, do 2 or 3 out ins in a row. All right, next, and you can watch this video later. Next, I'm moving back and forth evenly. Listen to it when I do out ins. That's even. Listen to swing, which is uneven. Here's even. Here's swing. Listen to that fast. Here's even. Swing. Even. Swing. It's a little hard to hear the difference. You know, the faster it gets. And also the faster it gets, the swing tends to straighten out. But the reason I bring this up is a lot of you are used to just doing it one way or the other. You don't do both. But I want to encourage you to figure out which one you normally do and start learning how to do the other one. And it's not just a matter of your right hand doing something new. Now, when you're using your fingers, they have to swing too. So instead of That's very even. Now you're going to swing both hands to have to feel different. Let's do that. Yeah, try this out. We're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And to get that to happen, I'm doing 4 fingers. You could use ring, middle, index, thumb, especially if you have no fingernails. You could also do pinky, ring, middle, index. It requires holding the dulcimer different. That's another class I teach. But let's play this together, and I want your right hand to alternate. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And I don't want you to share fingers. We'll do that later, but right now, 1 finger per note. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm not using the same finger to grab 2 different frets. 1 finger per fret. You can also try ring through thumb. And if you need to do it your way, that's okay too. Here we go. Evenly. 3, and ready, go. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. Do it again. 0, 1, 2. Can you hear the dulcimer okay? I don't want my voice to be too loud. All right, so if I looked around the room right now, I would notice some of you are doing this. Out, 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 out. And there's a time for that, but not now. I want you to make sure you're alternating pick direction for every note. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Some of you are using 3 fingers, and that's okay. And so when you run out of fingers, watch mine. You might slide up, and then when you run out of fingers, slide down. For what I'm going to show you today, I do that stuff too, but the less of that I do, the cleaner it is. So I've really worked on a 4-finger approach. So that's 4 fingers. I only use it for the hardest stuff. I do not use it 80% of the time. It's for that 20% of the time when I'm doing something fancy. All right, let's do it again. 3, and ready, go. Sometimes look at your hands while you're doing it, but sometimes look at my hands while you're doing it. Make sure you're alternating. Why in the world am I doing this? Seems like beginner stuff. It's because a lot of advanced people have the notes down. They have the ideas, but they don't have the technique and the rhythm flowing. And this is going to help us build. Let's do it with a swing now. This is going to be different. Right hand only. And it might help you to count out loud with me. So now this is uneven. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Notice on the beat, I hang in the out position longer. 4, and 1. And I'm not whipping the hand back. It hangs out. It's almost, I always think of bags of wet cement from WKRP in Cincinnati. It just hits the ground, and there it is. 1, and 2, and 3. And that was a little extreme. 1, but Thanksgiving is coming. And 3, and 4. And 1, and 2. Now, this thing you did with your left hand was even before. Now your left hand's going to have to swing with the fingerings. Do that with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2. On the next one, we're going to go back to even. 2, and 3, and 4. That's even. Let's go back to swing after this one. 1, 2, 3, weird to go back and forth, isn't it? Especially without changing your tempo. Why does this matter? It's because really good musicians typically will choose before they play something that it might be even, it might be swing. Some musicians tend to only do one or the other, but a lot of good players, you'll do Wildwood Flower even on purpose. Hear that evenness? And then the next time I play the tune, I think, man, let's get swingy. Uneven. Listen to that ending, even. I can't do it exactly, but here it is with the swing. Now, it's not such a big deal if you're by yourself, but if you're playing with another musician, you have to be in agreement with it. And if you watch really good strummers, you will see this in their hand. You'll see the right hand is either moving back and forth evenly, or you'll see it have this little jaunty, kind of uneven thing. Sometimes it's hard to tell what someone's doing. All right, so what did we do right before that? It was this. Hit every out, sometimes do an out in or group of out ins. And make it cool. If you're bored, it'll sound boring. You might have to pretend you're into it for a little bit until it catches. Let's go to swing. And 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. I'm leaving it in the out position longer now. My out only, I'm hanging out. Every once in a while I do an out in or a group of out ins. Go to even. Mostly hit out only. Every once in a while do an out in or a group of out ins. All right, you got to be good at that. And some of you, there's no way everyone's good at that right now. So put it on a list as something to get better at. It took me a good while to get it. All right. So we have a foundation of alternating the right hand, whether we're hitting the strings or not. And we've got swing versus straight. And we've got this idea that sometimes, especially for the trickier things, you have an option of using 4 fingers, or at least 3. Let's talk about using 1 finger a little bit. And we will refine this later. But watch this. Now you might think, here's more beginner stuff. No, this is hard to do well. I'm playing from the 2 to the 4, and then the 4 to the 2. I continue to press while I slide. I happen to be hitting a 3 on the way, but I do not think about it. I do not target it. I don't want to think of it. If I think of it, I screw it up. It's a 2 to 4, and if I'm pressing, the 3 will pop out. I'm not pausing so that the 3 will pop out. If I do that, it screws it up. Forget the 3. You're going from 2 to 4, and you're pressing as you do it. Now, I put a little, I do this a lot. I did it last night in the concert, right before a really hard thing. I just touch, 2 nights ago, I touched the left side of my nose to get a little oil, and then I come here, and I just rub that oil on the strings. And the reason I do that is when you're sliding back and forth, if it's not lubricated a little, it doesn't work right. I'll just leave it at that. I could tell you why, but get a little oil from your hair, the back of your neck. If that grosses you out, you can take there's something called exposure therapy that helped me. It'll help you too. All right. So I'm pushing, but don't push too hard, just enough so that when you go back and forth, you hear it. If your strings are rusty, this is unpleasant too. So that oil helps. And I'm strumming out, in, out, in, out. Out, in, out, in, out. And I'm not thinking of the 3. 2, 4, 2, and ready, go. 2, 4. Faster. I'm swinging it. Now I'm going to do it even. When you do it even, you have to time your slide better or different. Now we'll come back and refine this, but the cool thing about the dulcimer is, it's inefficient for fancy music. It's easier to play hard music on a guitar or fiddle or mandolin than it is on a dulcimer. Hard stuff is hard to do on this. Easy stuff is awesome on the dulcimer. Easy to medium stuff, awesome. That's its strength. But you start doing this crazy stuff, and it gets tricky. But these slides help make up for that. So instead of having to use 3 fingers here, watch this. Try that out. Whatever 3 fingers you want, middle index, thumb, whatever. And ready, go. Let's do a swing. Listen to it fast. Now watch, 1 finger. That is a really cool thing that our instrument does you don't hear on other instruments. When we slide, we hear a scale. Big spaces, little spaces. If you're on a diatonic instrument, you slide, you hear a scale. That way you don't have to fan out 4 fingers. But I like to do both. Watch me play, though, with 1 finger. One finger can do a lot if you learn how to use it right. It's noter style. But I also like to use multiple fingers. Let me wrap up this fingering thing. I want you to watch my fretting hand. I'm going to just make up a fiddle tune, and I want you to see that sometimes I'm doing piano-like fingerings with 4 fingers. Sometimes I'm using 1 finger. But most of the time, you'll see like a 3-finger thing going on, which for you, that might just be these 3. So I'm doing ring through index most of the time. Occasionally, I bring in that 4th one for the tricky stuff. Occasionally, I go into noter style for the tricky stuff. So just watch. I did a little more of the fancy stuff. But anyway, so you might be thinking to yourself, I'm never going to do that. But I want you to take the ideas that you will have. You can always use noter style or a 3-finger approach. But if you want the really tricky stuff, you can switch to a 4-finger method. Or don't do the trickiest stuff. Don't do the trickiest stuff. Now, you're going to watch back through this video, I hope, and there's these little chapters. You'll be able to linger. Turn this into something that means something to you. All right, here's a big thing. Before we go on, question about that craziness? The strumming we did is going to help, where we hit out only and sometimes did out ends or group of out ends. Don't forget about that. Swing versus straight, different fingering methods. Leslie, you got a question? She's unmuting now. Or trying.
Here we go. So, I remember when I first started taking classes from you, and you talked about how uh, you could tell a dulcimer player because they had a groove in their thumbnail. But you don't play that way anymore. Do you remember? You
Well,
you used
I do
to,
it with my index finger. I don't do it with my thumb much. So
yeah.
I do the same thing, but I'm just using. And here's something I should tell you guys: those slides work better when your fingers have really hard, dry calluses on them, because then they're like these hard surfaces, and the slides work better. If the end of your finger's all mushy, it doesn't work so great. That's why I used to use the side of my thumb to do that. You get that note or whistle and stuff. But if you play a lot, it eats into your flesh. It's terrible. It's like a flesh eating thing. But anyway, yes. And sometimes, too, I go through phases where I get bored and I'll do it some other way for a while. You can't do this your whole life without losing your mind. And I haven't lost my mind yet because of these little tricks. It's coming, I'm sure. All right. So now I want to show you, think back to that quarter note version of Whiskey Before Breakfast. Now we're going to start putting things together. That was an out-only version, and you were supplying some of the extra out-ends. That will make a simple version sound a little different each time. Let's say the first time through you didn't use a lot of out-ends, and the second time through you used a lot more out-ends. That would raise the energy level that second time through. So that's very important. But just like we can add extra strums the second time through to give it energy, the third time through, to go along with those extra strums, you can start adding extra notes. So I'm going to give you some examples of this. I'll give you the quarter notes, and then we'll add the notes to them, and then we're going to start going back to the paper and building on this stuff. Let's say I had a bunch of quarter notes, and it was just a bunch of sevens. Watch what I do here to them. There's three things happening. So I have quarter notes, and I hope you're doing all this with me, but you're welcome to also watch. I want to encourage you to do both. Watch this. All sevens, quarter notes, outs only. So that's the blank canvas. Next level of making it interesting is just add some out ends every once in a while. I'm going to do two out ends right here. Back to outs only. So that takes what was quarter notes and starts turning it into some eighth note pairs. Listen to it fast. Now I know that's very simple, but it's important. You can always take those quarter notes and just hit them more often. Next thing I did, watch this. Every once in a while, on the end of the beat, put a neighboring note and then come back to the seven. Now, if you do it all the time, it sounds like an alarm in the morning. I don't want to do it every time. So check this out. Most of the time, don't do it. Every once in a while, do one. Here's a lower neighbor. So now what I'm going to do is combine those three things. Sometimes I'll just hit the seven more often with extra strums. Sometimes I'll do an upper neighbor with a neighboring finger to the seven. Sometimes I'll do a lower neighbor with a neighboring finger. So the fingering I'm using right now is middle finger on 7, index on 8, ring on 6.5. You can use your set of 3 fingers. But the idea is you've got a 3-finger approach, and the center finger of the 3 is going to be on 7. For me, this upper finger grabs the 8s, the lower finger grabs the 6.5s. So I want you to improvise. Predominantly, you're going to hit 7 only, but every once in a while, you'll do a 8 and then right back to 7. And then every once in a while, go down to a 6.5 and back to the 7. But every out is a 7. Every out. So if you go to an 8, make sure you come back to a 7 for that out. And then the third thing is every once in a while, you're going to stay on the 7 and just add some out ends. So as a group, we're all hitting the 7s together like this. And you're doing some extra strums now and then. But every once in a while, add an upper neighbor on the and of the beat, the end strum. Not often, though. Mostly, you're just going to do more 7s. There was a 6.5. Now, the trick here is, if I was in the room with you, are you keeping that hand moving or are you pausing it? I want you to keep it moving. Listen to this fast. Every out is a 7. Not that it has to be, but this exercise, every out is a 7. So I have a 3-finger approach right now that's centered on the 7. But watch, what if I go down here? Now I'm centered on the 3. Now my upper and lower neighbors are 2s and 4s. I might slide this middle finger up to 8. Now my upper and lower neighbors are 9 and 7. Watch this. I'm just thinking quarter notes, and wherever this finger goes, I sometimes add extra strums. I sometimes add an upper or lower neighbor in the scale, a neighboring note in the scale with that end strum. All right, let's do it centered on 2. Every once in a while, mostly just do some out ends, but every once in a while on the end, go to a neighboring note and then get right back to our main note. Slide up to a 3 now. Every out is a 3 now. Now go to 4s. Every out is a 4. 7s. Now, if we go to 6.5 as our main note, what will the neighboring notes be to a 6.5 in the key of D? If you were being strict about it, it'd be a 5 and a 7. So if the main note's a 6.5 in the key of D, there's usually not a 6 or a C. So it's not necessarily the neighboring fret, but the neighboring note in the scale. Let's look at Whiskey Before Breakfast. Bring that up. The one that was all quarter notes. It was the second page. Man, I wish I had numbered those. Whiskey Before Breakfast, all quarter notes. Nice and boring looking. It is, until you add extra strums, different every time you play it, until you start adding some of these neighbors. So these neighbors we were just adding in, where can we do that here? It's going to be anytime it's the same number on every beat. Where do you see that happening? Look at measures 1 and 2, all those 4s. I'm going to have that finger on 4, and the outer fingers can grab the neighbors. But I don't do that a lot, just a little. Look at measure 3. You got 2 3s in a row. Greg, hold up some fingers. What could you put between 2 3s? What neighboring fret numbers? A 2 or a 1. So look at measure 3. In between the 3's on the and, you can go up or down to a neighboring note in the scale. Look at measure 3, the 2 2's. This will accommodate a 1 or a 3, a 1 or a 3. So I want you to look around the page where we see the same number repeated beat after beat, at least twice. Sometimes you'll see it 3, 4 times. Look at measure 9. There's 3 7s there. So watch what I'm going to do here. First, I play the beginner version. This is measure 9. Now I'm going to do that measure over and over. And then I'm going to start to add extra strums. And then I will occasionally add an upper or lower neighbor between 2 of those 7s. You don't have to do all 3, but you could. This is quarter notes. I'm doing that measure 9 over and over. Do that with me. Keep doing that, but every once in a while just add an out-in strum. And you can do it different places every time. Or you could add a lot of out-ins. And it should be a little different every time. Now, when you get to these 7s, let's just say we put something between the first 2 7s in measure 9. Say it with me. Let's put an 8 between the first 2 7s. Just say it. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. Again. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. This is measure 9. On the page, it just says whiskey before breakfast at the top, and it's all quarter notes. Third line. Measure 9 only. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. I want you to just do it all with your mouth. Don't use your picks for just a second. Just say quarter notes. 4, 7, 7, 7. 4, 7, 7. Now say an and after every number. 4 and 7 and 7 and 7 and 4 and 7. Good. On those ands, that's where we're going to put things. Every once in a while, just say the same number again, like this. 4, 7, 7, 7, 7. 4, 4, 7, 7, 7. 4, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. 4, 4, 7, 7. So that's where we just start adding out ends. You're just hitting the same numbers more times is all that is. Let's do the upper neighbor between the first 2 7s. It'll be an 8. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. Say it again. 4, 7, 8, 7. 7. That's an upper neighbor. Let's change to a lower neighbor, which would be a 6.5. 4, 7, 6.5, 7. 7. 4, 7, 6.5, 7. 7. You got to spit out 6.5. You guys are saying it too slow. Let's instead put an upper neighbor between the last 2 7s of that measure. An 8 between the last 2 7s. 4, 7, 7, 8, 7. Again. 4, 7, 7, 8, 7. Again. 4, 7, 7. This time do a lower neighbor. 4, 7, 7, 6.5, 7. 4, 7, 7, 6.5, 7. Instead of 6.5, try putting a 5 there. 4, 7, 7, 5, 7. There's other options. But I want you to know in old-time fiddle music, and people think I'm making this up sometimes, when you learn tunes, you don't learn note for note from the fancy versions. I mean, some genius kids do, by the time they're 8. But then they usually move on to weird things, like a career in bluegrass or something. But a lot of people, they learn a bare bones version of a tune. They don't learn all the fancy notes. And then, in addition to that, they start to learn how to add fancy notes to any skeleton. And that's what we're doing here. And then when you go to learn a tune by ear, you're always learning a beginner version of the tune and then adding fancy things in with methods like this instead of reading them off of the paper or memorizing them. You train yourself, like we're just doing on this measure 9, to play it different constantly. Look at those 3 7s in measure 9. What if between beats 2 and 3 we put an 8, and between beats 3 and 4 we put a 6.5? So we start with the upper neighbor and then we use the lower neighbor. Speak it before you play it. 4, 7, 8, 7, 6.5, 7. Do it again. 4, 7, 8, 7, 6.5, 7. Say it again. 4, 7, 8, 7, 6. This time let's start with the lower neighbor. So you'll start with the 6.5 and then do the 8 next. 4, 7, 6.5, 7, 8, 7. Again. 4, 7, 6.5, 7, 8, 7. Look at that 4. If we made that an out in, an eighth note pair, you'll end up saying 4 twice. So listen to this. 4, 4, 7, 6.5, 7, 8, 7. 4, 4, 7, 6, 7. All this, I know this seems crazy a little bit. Some of you are going, what? What I just showed you in this measure is mostly how I make that measure fancier. And I don't add all those things all the time. I just put a little bit in. Your bread and butter is going to be adding extra strums. Occasionally add an extra note like we're doing here. All right, I want to play through the first, I want to play through the 4th line. The 4th line, some of you have had this 10 times from me. The 4th line, I want you to say an upper neighbor in between every like pair of numbers. Just the like pair. Don't play it, just say it. 7, 8, 7. 6.5, 7, 6.5. 5, 6.5, 5. 4, 5, 4. 3, 4, 3. 2, 3, 2. So this is a great line to practice your neighbors. So let's just play the quarter notes first. I'm going to use the middle finger, and my left and right neighboring notes I can grab with the outer fingers, but I'm going to start with this center finger. 3, the 4th line only. 3 and ready, go. 7, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 5, 5, 4. Put some out in strums in there. Let's do it again. Don't do the neighbors yet. Just add extra strums. 4th line. Why don't you do all 8th notes, all out ends? Again. 7, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 5, 4. I'm lost. 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. All right, now put in upper neighbors. 7, 8, 7, 6.5, 7, 6.5. And don't slide one finger back and forth. Use 2 different fingers. 3 and ready, go. 8, 7, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 5, 6.5, 5, 4, 5, 4. Next measure. 3, 4. Keep that right hand moving. Don't pause it. Keep it moving. Hey, move it like. Let's try some lower neighbors. This time it'll be 7, 6.5, 7. And then 6.5, 5, 6.5. Watch my left hand. Three and ready, slow. 7, 6.5, 7, 6.5. 5, 6.5, 5. We're only doing this between like numbers right now. All right, now this is going to be tricky for you, but here's the goal. Mostly we're going to make this fourth line fancy by just putting out ends in different places every time you do it. It's not a memorized strum. You're not sight reading it. You're improvising it. But like 3.5% of the time, I want you to consider adding in one of those neighbors. So I'm going to leave the extra strums out and listen for the neighbors. So I didn't do it everywhere. You could just do it in one place or two. That's enough. But at the end of the tune, when you really want to take it home, you might want to do a bunch more. Here's me doing the fourth line with mostly just extra strums and just a couple neighbors. And I want you to know, when I look at this fourth line, I don't want to know more than what's on there. I can generate these types of additions for everything, including Mary Had a Little Lamb. And this isn't me. This isn't like Weird Steve. Like if you're hanging out with good old time musicians, they learn the skeleton of the tune by ear. We're getting it from this paper. And they already know how to do this trick on anything, anytime. Listen to old Joe Clark. I put in a couple of them in there. You just start looking for places to do this. Now, there's a built-in advantage for the dulcimer solo. When you're getting up on stage, you don't want to do the same thing over and over for the judge. So if you train this process into you of adding these extra strums and these upper and lower neighbors whenever you have like notes, you can always take your tune up a notch. You can always say, okay, I'm going to do Soldier's Joy, but keep it easy, keep it simple. Second time through, I'm going to add more strums, and I'm going to add just a couple neighbors. You don't have to put many. And the audience and the judge will feel that that second time through had a little more action to it. And that's where I think the dulcimer solo becomes interesting, because at that point, they don't know what to expect from you. They have no idea what the third time is going to be. Ask me a question about this. Some of you are like, yeah, we already had this class.
Steve, I haven't had this class, and this is really helpful. So I'm learning a lot.
Good. It's hard to do. When I first learned this, I had to go sit somewhere and go real slow and play the same one or two measures over and over and over, which was discouraging because I thought I don't have to do this to every measure and every tune. But after you get 3 or 4 measures over and over in just one tune, it quickly spreads to all the other tunes because they're all very similar. Think of Bob Them Cabbage with the 4 2s at the beginning. 2, 2, 2, 2, where you can add extra strums or neighboring notes there. We got one more section to look at. We got to look at, on the same page, I want you to look at the first measure. 0, 2, 4, 4. We've just been putting things between like numbers, but what if the numbers are different? Well, sometimes when the numbers are different, there is a neighboring note between them. So look at the first measure, that 2 and 4. What fret number in the scale is a neighboring note to 2 and 4 and is between them? It's a 3. So I want you to say measure 1 with me, but in between the 2 and the 4, I want you to say 3. 0, 2, 3, 4. 4. Again. 0, 2, 3, 4. Get those lips moving. 0, 2, 3, 4. Now take it out. 0, 2, 4. 4. Again. 0, 2, 4. Now add it back in. 0, 2, 3, 4. 4. 0, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it again, but this time between the O and the 2 only. Put a 1 between the O and the 2, just speaking. 0, 1, 2, 4, 4. 0, 1, 2, 4. Now take it out. 0, 2, 4. Put it back in. Oh, 1, 2, 4. What can you put between the two 4s? An upper or a lower neighbor. It could be a 5. It could be a 3. Look at the last 4 and measure 1. And the first 4 measure 2. You could put something between those. There's an and between them, a 5 or a 3 or a 2. Usually it's neighboring notes in the scale, but you can leap somewhere. Listen to me play the first measure over and over. Let's see. I want you to see that. We got a lot to do, y'all. First measure only. You can do it with me if you want. Now I'm going to add out-in strums, but not everywhere. I'm still not doing the neighbors. This is my second time through the tune where I just wanted to have more strums. I'm going to do all out-ins here. Now I'm going to put one neighbor in. I'll do it between the 4s. But then I'll take it out. And now I'm going to put it back in, but this time a lower neighbor. 4, 3, 4. Take it out. I'm going to put something between the 2 and the 4. 2, 3, 4, 4. Do that with me. So to do this, we have a 2 and a 4. And I want to have an available finger between that can grab that in-between note in the scale. So I have ring and index doing the 2 and 4. And if I want it, the middle finger will grab the 3. 0, 2, 3, 4. 4. Again. 0, 2, 3. When you get to the 4s, just do some extra strumming. Now take all that out and just make it simple again. And between the 4s, do a quick upper neighbor. Go to a 5 right here. Use 2 fingers to do it. Now take that out. This time do a lower neighbor between the 4s. Hope you're doing it with me. Take that out. Go back to the simple. Now just put some out-in strums in there, but not everywhere. All right, between the 2 and the 4, let's add that 3. 2, 3, 4, 4. So what I want you to do at your level is choose from everything I've given you there and think about what's appropriate for where you're at right now. So most of you should definitely spend time adding out-ins to what's on that paper. That's going to make it sound cool. And every time you get to the same measure, you might put them in different places and different concentrations. Some of you are ready to look for an upcoming pair of notes that are the same number, like 7, 7, and just on the and between them, on that end strum, just add a quick upper or lower neighbor. And you could do 1 per line or 1 every couple of measures. Look for a like pair and then either go up or down 1 note in the scale, and you can experiment with going up or down to other ones. Some of you are ready for that other one we did. Like, what do you do when the notes are different, a 2 and a 4? You spread the 3 fingers out and you've got that in-between one. So incrementally add these things in. Now, here's what's good about teaching this. Like, I know some of you are thinking, that you're not me, and, this is probably not going to work for you. This is where I cap it for most people. I don't think it has to ever get any more complicated than this. You can play through a tune for a contest 3 times. First time, very beginner, very few out-in strums. Second time, lots more out-ins, and maybe just 1 or 2 neighbors the whole time. That's like a wink at the judges. Hey, there's more to come. Third time through, just add a couple more neighbors. Put your strums in different places. Done. Now, if you will suffer and learn this slowly and methodically, just on a few measures, you can then revisit everything you're tired of, all the tunes you're tired of, and just take a 2-measure chunk and try to boil it down. Look at, on the handout front, the very first page I gave you, the one that's out of Join the Jam. In this version, it says whiskey before breakfast, and you see eighth note pairs, and in the first measure, there's a parenthesis around the 3. Down in the bottom right, it says page 101. This is out of Join the Jam. How could you turn this into a skeleton? Every time you come to an eighth note pair, ignore the second note of the eighth note pair. And that will turn every measure into 4 quarter notes. If the note's not on the beat, you're ignoring it. So look at measure 1. You ignore the 1, the 3, and then that last 4 in that measure. And that would leave you with 4 beats, 4 quarter notes. Look down at measure 16, the last one on the page. What do you do with a half note? You can turn it into 2 quarters. So that O becomes 2 O's. At the beginning of measure 16, we're going to ignore the second note of every eighth note pair, so ignore the 2. So in your mind's eye, measure 16 becomes 1, 1, O, O. That's your skeleton. And if you turn to that page that we were just spending time on where it's all quarter notes, you could write out tunes like this to help you in this phase where you're trying to make fancy things simple and simple things fancier. So I want you to imagine that you're going to actually go practice this later, which could be a little painful. Do you have any questions that would help you do that more successfully? You don't have to do it all. But I do want you to work on one of those things we've covered. What if you took out a pencil right now and wrote in as many in-between things as possible? Look at the first measure. Between the O and the 2, we could have a 1. Between the 2 and the 4, we could put a 3. Between the 4 and the 4, a 5. The next pair of 4s, a 3. The next pair of 4s, a 5 again. Between the 4 and the 2, a 3. Between the 2 and the O, you could pack it in. And that's going to be your fancy version at the end when you're really trying to surprise your audience. And in order to do this, you really do have to work on fingerings. That's where you might have to, you'd be signing up for a lesson with someone and saying, how can I do this better? It's a mess, and they'd make a suggestion and you'd try it out. So, watch. I'm just taking it up a notch, trying to have a busy, notey version. And I'm telling you, I used to get discouraged because I thought, I want to be a good player. Am I going to have to memorize all these fancy versions of tunes? Well, some people maybe. Maybe some people compose their fancy versions and then memorize that. That's a legitimate option. But for me, I had to wing it systematically, practice winging it this way. And since then, I've really started to notice the musicians who do this. Jim Miller, he's always dropping in these little extra notes everywhere. All right, listen. When did we start this class? At 12? No, it wasn't 12. It was 12:45.
Yeah, 12:45.
Eastern time. All right. So we just went an hour and 15 minutes? Yeah. All right. I want you to have a 4-minute break. So run to the bathroom and take a leave, and I'll see you in 4 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're back. I gave you 4.5 minutes. I felt like it wasn't enough of a break. All right. So, let's talk about octaves. Watch this. I'm just going to take the first part of this tune. Now, you know, when you play whiskey, you're used to hearing this. Something like that. I like to start with a beginner version, so I turn it into all quarter notes, and that's what I start with the audience. And then I start adding things in. Here comes more. I will gradually move up to fancier and fancier things. I don't care what you do those first two measures, but let's do it on the melody string. 1, 2, ready, swing it. Again. Now move that over to the bass string. I'm on the bass. Melody string. Bass string. It's really important, I think, that you be able to play a beginner version and a slightly more developed version and a fancier version of the tune on the melody string and over on the bass string. Listen to old Joe Clark. And then the next developed. And then a fancy one. That was 3 ways of doing it, but that was all in the melody. Then try it on the bass. So that's 6 versions, you guys. Think about this. 6 things. How do you get them? Well, one of them's on the melody string. It's just your basic tune. It's whatever you play normally. Next, drop the second note of every 8th note pair. You just created the skeleton. That's another version. You can add the extra strums. Third is more of a developed thing where you're adding maybe a couple neighbors, bunch of extra strums. That's your 3 versions on the melody string. Do that same thing on the bass. You got 6 ways of doing it. That's more than you need. I don't run through all of those when I play. So I don't care what tune it is. Mary Had a Little Lamb, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I get to work. And I do my best to have fun, and do something cool with it. If you want to take a solo, if you're with a group of people and they go, Sue, do a solo. Well, Sue might do any of those 6. And you could drift from one of them to another halfway through, and then boom, the fiddle takes over. Or you're doing a contest. You don't want to do it 6 times. You go, I'm going to do it 4 times. Between those 6 versions, you could certainly plan it out. And I do want to make the point here that some people will plan it out note for note and memorize it. Really good musicians, some do it like that. Other ones memorize these processes, and they like to have it unfold in real time. But they practice that a lot, So going to the bass string, we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. Just go there. There's some right-hand things I teach that bring it out and make it different, but that's good. Here's the next thing. The plan up high. So O to 7 is the scale. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. That's our D major scale. I can start here at 7 and get the same scale. a little out of tune up there. Now, I know this is an advanced class, but I want to make sure everybody's got this. Whether you have a 1.5 or not. Here's my pattern. Look at my pattern. Big, big, little, big, big, and then little, 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 if you count all the frets. I have that same pattern from here to here. Look, big, big, one little one, big, big, three little ones. And I teach this a lot. You've probably heard me say it. So I think of it like this, kind of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5. And then when I get to 7, I think of it as a 1 again. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I think of it as an open. Let me say that again. When I get to 7, if I'm going to keep going up, sometimes I think of this as an open, even though I'm actually playing a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, 7. So I want you to, as you watch back through this video, I'm sure you'll watch it every day for a week. I want you to think about one homework assignment is, can you take what you're used to playing down here, Old Joe Clark, Soldier's Joy, whatever, can you move it up here and just pretend you're on a little dulcimer? It looks like a little dulcimer. One big difference is there's no, instead of O for open, O is what we usually call 7. I pretend I'm on a little dulcimer. Look at this up here with Old Joe Clark. Wildwood Flower. Let's play just really fast. Bow Them Cabbage. You're going to start at 9, but I want you to pretend it's a 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0. So what usually O you come off, but up here you got to fret 7. Make a list of like 5 to 10 tunes that you can convert to up here. Look at this. Whatever I do on the melody string, I can do on the bass. So Wildwood Flower up here, or on the bass. So now Whiskey Before Breakfast can be played down here on the melody string or on the bass. And I can come up to what feels like a little dulcimer and do it on the melody and the bass. So we have 3 versions. You guys look like, some of you look like you're in geometry class. You got 3 versions. You got the normal one. You got a simplified one that's like a skeleton, which is helpful for learning how to add things. And then you've got a slightly developed one where you've got the extra out ends and the neighboring notes. So that's 3 versions in 4 places. That's 12. This is not weird Steve land. This is, musicians have been doing this for a long time land. If you listen to Bach at a party after 2 glasses of wine, I don't know if he had wine or not. Maybe he just had water. But he's doing this kind of stuff. And then they said, hey, if you don't want your family to starve, we'll give you some money. Can you write it out for all these people? Yeah, I can write it out. You know, and then he probably fell in love with that whole thing. But musicians like to take a skeleton and work it. Take it to different octaves, make it fancier, make it simpler. Now, some of you have heard this before, so I'd be interested in just a minute of your feedback where you might go, you know, I tried this and it's terrible. You know, like, or, you know, I tried a little of this. You know, any thoughts on this? Or maybe you have a way of doing this. Like Ryan, you just have, I guess it's your hat, but it looks like you probably do this kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I like to write out my own version. So I end up with a kind of complicated looking tab that I wouldn't share with the family members who play the dulcimer as well, because it's my version and it's something that doesn't necessarily make sense to anyone else.
Yeah, and that's
But
really good. I'm always in the habit of writing out for my students, but I have to have things for me that mean something to me, like what you're saying. That's good.
yeah, we're the family where you send a Dulcimer up to Canada.
Oh, that's right. I know your face, but you got the hat. I don't remember the window, but that's some nice light.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
another thought somebody else got for me? Kevin, aren't you kind of an improviser?
A little bit. I'm trying to get better at that.
I mean, everyone's a combination of things. Like you plan 95% of it, but then you start working in a little bit of, or maybe you're someone who improvises a lot and you're trying to, like for me, I want to write out some things and plan them out so it's not all on the, but after enough time all that blends together and it'll be your own unique approach when you get up on stage. You found something that works for you. I want you to stop thinking of these tunes like they're written in stone, and I want you to start thinking of them as blank canvases for your creativity. You know the quarter note version of Whiskey Before Breakfast? What if you composed a tune of all quarter notes? It'd be very boring, just like whiskey. But when you start fleshing it out, all of a sudden you just wrote a tune, and all you had to do is come up with quarter notes. It's a neat idea. Let me play a tune for you guys. Let's see. I'm going to do the Mary Had a Little Lamb here. See that neighbor? See the neighbors? I'm playing on the bass and the melody. Now I could go on and on. It needs an ending. Now, it's hard to make that tune interesting, but it's a playground I get to get on. And I tell you what's really beautiful for me is I don't feel like I have to learn so much hard stuff to have fun with people. I find people that are in the neighborhood of my personality. None of us are the same. And they function like this too. It's like easy tunes, and then let's take turns doing things to them. Because none of us want to work too hard, right? Give me another thought before we go on.
It's not really a thought, but now you want me to play with Mary Had a Little Lamb, which I haven't played in ages and ages and ages.
It's funny. It's like if you haven't hung out with your mom a lot, and then one day it just occurs to you, I think I need to hang out with mom more. And you go and you do it, and it wasn't as easy as you thought it was going to be.
That is so true.
That's a terrible metaphor, I guess, but I feel like you don't have to go to Marry a Little Lamb, but you might be going to Hard Times Come Again No More or when the Saints go marching in. Stuff you've already kind of moved past. You know, you might see a one of these tunes in a book, a Dulcimer book, and you go, "Oh, this is weird." Well, maybe it wasn't the tune that was weird. Maybe it was the arrangement, or maybe it was just the way they write stuff out that didn't click with you, or maybe they put too much stuff in. That's why I like to boil it down to a skeleton, and then apply these tricks to it. I
You
do
know
love
what?
my mom. I'm just telling you, it's hard sometimes, isn't it, with family anyway? Yes, go ahead, Laurie. Laurie?
Sorry, my dog's barking.
Okay.
Your best example, I think of that, Steve, is grandfather's clock. It just blew me away when I listened to that. You perform that for the first time.
Well, thank you. That's one where someone said, "Do you know grandfather's clock?" And I remember I did an okay version, but it really didn't do much, you know. And then I caught myself playing in front of people thinking, "Oh, I ought to do that again." And it just started to grow. And then when things really get interesting is when, let's say you have a contest or a performance and you're sitting backstage or you're at the hotel and you're thinking, "I need to do something cool on grandfather's clock," you know, and you work up an ending, and then 6 months later you think of that again and you work up an intro. That's the way I operate, and I'm on medication for that. But a lot of you guys have different ways of doing things. All right, so let's look at a few of these things. We have so much we could do. I realize this is a 12-hour course in 2 hours. Let's look at the third version of whiskey real quick. It's the one that's sideways. All this is sometimes when I have a bunch of the same number in a row, I just added a half note. All this is a kind of an easier on the eyes version where like look at measure 4. There were 2 1s at the beginning, and I just turned it into a half note. So, but what I want you to see here is if we play this, every time we get to a half note, I want you to do an air strum where there previously was a note. I want you to do an air strum where there previously was a note. So watch how this looks. Air. Here comes measure 3. 3, air. 2, air. 1, air. 2, 1. So anytime there's a half note, I just don't want you to stop moving. Keep moving to the beat. Keep swinging or whatever. Now there's times for other things later, but just right now. I call this kind of a subtractive form of variation. Just stop hitting the strings so often. Sometimes just let them ring. And this can really introduce a lot of air into a version. If you just laid something heavy on a bunch of listeners and then you followed up with something like this, it provides some air. It brings some beauty into it, I think. So I'm going to play through this page. You play through it with me. Sometimes when we get through to these quarter notes, I want you to do some eighth note pairs. So just turn some of the out onlys into out ins. But when we get to these half notes, just move in the air with me so we can hear those ring nice and long. We'll do a swing here. 1, 2, ready, go. I'm doing some out in strums, but here's an air strum right here. But I still keep moving as if I'm hitting the strings. So this is a very short example of how you can do less. I mean, sometimes I think with dulcimers, we're just beating the listener over the head with, you know. Give them a little break once in a while. How did I get that quarter note version? I looked at the busy join the jam version with a lot of eighth note pairs. I ignored the second note of every pair. And sometimes when I saw a half note, I would turn it into 2/4. That gives me 4 numbers per measure. And if this was a by ear class, I could teach you to do that by ear without any music. It's a different system. So what did we just do here? We took some of those numbers that were just the same numbers and basically tied them together to create some half notes. It's beautiful to add that in to something. Oh, let's look. Let's go to another page. Next page, it says whiskey before breakfast, flat picking. Now, I can't teach my flat picking class right now. So let's just use this as a source book for ideas. My right hand, I'm not going to do a big flat picking class, so let me give you some fake picking. Instead of flat picking, we'll do some fake picking. Watch my right hand. When you flat pick, you know, sometimes you're changing strings, this kind of stuff. And then the left hand is fretting different strings. I'm hitting different strings. I'm moving with both hands, but let's not do that exactly. For your right hand, for this page we're getting ready to do, I want you to just do full strums the whole time. So even though the numbers are written on different strings, you're just going to do the same kind of strumming we've been doing. And that's a wonderful, because it sounds cool and it's a nice intermediate step to flat picking, and you never have to get to where you're hitting individual strings if you don't want. This says whiskey before breakfast, flat picked fancy. Listen to this. So something like that. I'm just full strumming it. Left hand is playing what's on the paper. Now, I might not, in a performance, do this whole thing, but I certainly could borrow it sometimes. Watch this. I'm going to borrow from this right now. And then I'm back to kind of a normal whiskey before breakfast. So you could just use a little bit of this. But let's try playing it with a full strum and a swing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I might have played different notes. Let's do the whole first line again. Here we go again. Oh, 1, 2, 3, oh. Oh, 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 1, oh. 3, 2, oh, 1, 2, 3. 1, 3, 2. Oh, 2, 1. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 2. So you could borrow from that. You could change it, tweak it a little, a lot. Just let it inspire you. Let's look at the next page. It says whiskey with a 1.5 fret. Man, I wish I had one here. I'm going to pretend it's happening at the 4th fret just so you can hear it. So I'm pretending that I'm capoed at 4, and I'm pretending it's a dulcimer with a 1.5. It will not be in the right key, but you'll get the idea. I played it wrong a little, but you hear that bluegrassy thing where I'm using that extra fret to get that. So I want you guys with the 1.5 frets and a full strum, if you like. I want to hear you play from measure 1. I'm just going to provide backup. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2. Second measure, oh, 1, oh, 3, 1.5, 2, second line, 3, oh, 1, 3, 2, 3, oh, 2, 1, oh, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Do that again. I'm going to go slower. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and oh, 1, 1.5, 2, oh, 3, 1.5, 2, oh, 1, oh, 3, 1.5, 2, oh. Second line, 3, oh, 1, 3, 2, 3, oh, 2, 1, oh, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1.5, 1, oh. So I'll let you hammer on that on your own. But there's some nice musical bluegrassy sounding ideas in here. This whiskey before breakfast, your homework for this is to look on YouTube where I'm playing it and just ponder things. Notice up at the top it says Capo 4. So I'm actually doing this whiskey before breakfast in the key of A. I don't think it says that. The key signature's there. But this is something, if you like those bluegrassy ideas, you might try this here. Well, why did I capo at 4? Because I didn't have a 1.5 fret. And if you capo at 4, you get some of the similar things a 1.5 gives you. And I don't want to play everything in D all the time, my fellow Dulcimer soloists. I don't want to play D all night. So, you know, I'm not mad at the 1.5 fret, and I've used them and I love them. But most of the time I don't use them on purpose. Because when I want to do those bluegrassy things we just did, I capo at 4, and it puts me in a new key. So on stage, it's nice that I'm not playing in the same key every song. I like that. It's like going to a different room of your house. All right, let's see what else we have.
Steve, may I ask a question? How are you
Sure.
putting the intro zeros if you're capoed at 4?
Because those stand for open. So that's a style of tablature writing that most Dulcimer people do. When you capo somewhere, whatever fret you capo at, those are now referred to as O's for open. But I know they look a lot like zeros, don't they? But that's pretty common with Dulcimer people. You'll find some Dulcimer books from the 80s where they didn't do that. So if you capo at 4, you'll see a bunch of 4s in there. But nowadays, if you capo at 4, you'll see O's. But all the other numbers are the same. Nothing changes. A 5's a 5, whether capo's on or not. All right, so let's look at the first Amazing Grace you've got there. How do we get a skeleton out of this? You ignore the second note of every 8th note pair. So just say the numbers with me as if there are none of those 8th note pairs. Pretend everything's a quarter note. Just speak the numbers with me. 4, 7, 7, 9, 9, 9, 8, 7, 7, 5, 4, 4, 4. Let's do that again. It just says Amazing Grace, and it's got quarter notes and 8th notes in it. Boy, I did a terrible job, didn't I? Let's see. It says page 8 in the lower left-hand corner. It isn't page 8, but it does say page 8. So it's the Amazing Grace that has 8 in the bottom left-hand corner. I'll count you in. Just say the quarter note version out loud with me. You're having to ignore things on the paper. 1, 2, 3, ready, go. 4, 7, 7, 9, 9, 9, 8, 7, 7, 5, 4, 4, 4, 7. Every time I come to what looks like an 8th note pair, I ignore the second note of the pair. So there's not that many amazing graces. Just find the one that's got 8 in the lower left-hand corner. That's the one we're doing. All right, let's play this. But I don't want you to play everything. I only want you to do 3 quarter notes per measure, and we do have a pickup note. It'll sound like this. Now, this is hard when you've never done this kind of thing before. You're ignoring what's on the page. It'll take a little getting used to. Let's try it. Ready, go. 4, 7, 7, 9, 9, 9, 8, 7, 7, 5, 4. Go to the next line right here. 7, 7, 9, 9, 9, 8, 11, 11, 11, and stop. That's your skeleton. That's your quarter note version of this tune. Now, eventually you won't need to write it out for yourself. But one of your homework assignments is to take this and write out the quarter note version. It's in 3/4. Because then you can start to treat it like we did Whiskey Before Breakfast. You can put in extra strums, upper and lower neighbors. Try moving things to other octaves. Some will work, some won't. I gave you a version with lyrics just because I wanted you to have that. There actually is a quarter note version. Let's turn to it. This one. Let me see if I can show this to you. One moment, please. Da, 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 da. It's nice to hear me shut up, isn't it, a little? Screen capture. Here we go. That's trippy. Yeah, that's what we'll do. All right, let me get this off of here. All right. Right now, you're looking at music, correct?
Yes.
All right. This is the one I want you to find. And the first 2 lines, all quarter notes. There's no page number, unfortunately. So this has had them removed for you. So let's put a swing on this. And every once in a while, instead of hitting out only, I want you to do an out in or a group of out ins. But we're going to continue to ignore whatever we got rid of. All right. So let's try that. And you're looking at your own paper, hopefully. 1, 2, 3, ready, go. It's your out ends and your swing that are going to make this sound pretty, not the paper. Here's all these 11s. Hear that swing? All right, let's see if we can add some upper or lower neighbors somewhere. Look at the first complete measure. It's actually measure 2. 4, 7, 7, 9, 9. Look at those 2 9s. The 9 that ends measure 2 and the 9 that begins measure 3. What neighboring note could we put on between them? A simple option. An 8 or a 10. I'll leave it up to you. Before we play it, just say it. Let's both say 10 between them. It's after the last note of measure 2 and before the first note of measure 3. There's an and there. We're going to put a 10 on it. So just speak the numbers from the beginning. 4, 7, 7, 9, 10, 9, 9. Do that again. 4, 7, 7, 9, 10, 9. Now say an 8 between them. 4, 7, 7, 9, 8, 9, 9. Look at these 7s coming up in measure 4. Why don't you try putting something between those? So you might go, well, this isn't quite the melody to Amazing Grace. It is. We've deconstructed it so that we can create a solo, some unique statement coming from you. You know, I always try to, I don't want to drift too far from the shore when I'm playing a solo. I like to keep coming back to the melody. But if just for the first line, you did something different like we're doing here, and then on the second line, get right back to playing good old-fashioned, Amazing Grace, it'll give that first line something neat. So before we do that, Leslie, you have a question? Go ahead and unmute. Or maybe you don't.
Sorry, forgot to unmute. I could be wrong, and I don't remember where I read this, but it's my understanding that the oldest versions of Amazing Grace were very straight, and all the ornamentation that people put on now, that all came later.
Yeah, I've seen old versions of it. Like if you look at Isaac Watts, is that his name? Well, there's old hymnals. I forget what he did or why I said his name, but there's old hymnals where it's a little different everywhere. But look, you guys, this is just like a biscuit recipe. So Kimberly would say, my mother puts this much water into it. And Holly goes, that's wrong. You're not supposed to put that much water in a biscuit recipe. You're supposed to put this much water. These tunes, what's beautiful about them is how we filter them through our capabilities and our interests, So yes, Leslie. So maybe maybe we can imagine this is a more primitive version or something, which is kind of a neat idea. All right, let's play through this. Remember, between the first 2 9s, which straddles 2 measures, you're going to put an 8 or a 10, and I'm watching the clock. And then when we get to the 2 7s in measure 4, you're going to put something in between those. From the top. 1, 2, 3, ready, go. 4, 7, 7. Here it is. 9, 10, 9, 9, 8, 7, 6.5, 7, 5, 4. Now you might not like doing it in those spots. Why don't you find other spots? Look, you could put something in measure 2 between the 7 and the 9. What would that be? An 8, maybe. In measure 5, maybe you'll slip a 5 after the first 4 and a 3 after the second 4. I'm watching the clock. Let's try that. Let's play it together. And what you're going to do is everyone's going to be adding different things, mostly extra strums, occasionally maybe these notes. 1 and 2 and 3, ready, go. I'm doing some extra strums, and then 9, 8, 9. Elevens. Stop. Then do that on the melody string, do that on the bass string, and then do all that up on the little dulcimer up high. Take some flat picking courses. So what I want you to do, here's the wrap up for the class, is I want you to piece together. I mean, it doesn't have to be a contest, but since we're out of time, let me just say, you're preparing for a contest. And you've decided, they told you it should be under 3 minutes, and you think you can get through this thing 5 times at the tempo you like. So You're going to watch this video and go through all these ideas and apply these ideas to something you want to do. And use a watch and figure it out. I like to say little things to myself like jump up an octave. Now get fancier. Go back down. Get simpler. But you might want to plan it out. And maybe you plan it out the first few times and it just starts sticking and you start being able to do it to other things a little and then a lot. It's all depending on what you want to do with it. Let me look at the class description before we end. Yeah. There's other ways to do variations. We didn't use the chord charts like I wanted to, but try this out. Oh, and here's an added bonus. When you break these tunes down to the skeleton and then build them back up, you'll be able, I think, to digest other people's arrangements quicker. You'll be able to make the hard measure easier, the boring measures a little more cool with some extra strums. But it might give you some insight into playing by ear. Ear players, most of them don't get every note. They extract that skeleton, and then they use traditional methods to flesh it out in a way that's fairly consistent with what the people around them are doing. So in a way, learning to think like this is like learning how to speak fiddle tune. And when you can really speak this language, you start learning tunes quicker. And if you don't like these tunes, there's Scandinavian tunes. There's, there's Bulgarian tunes. Oh, those are very hard, though. Thank you guys very much. I'll get you a video, hopefully tomorrow. Get out there and do this stuff and give me some feedback. I love you, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Adios.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great class.